Welcome to another episode of Small Business Small Talk. I'm Dan. Joining me is Sarah here in studio. We have Ian joining us remotely. How are you guys doing?
Good. Good.
Right. Awesome. Good to hear. So today we're going to be talking about the customer journey and everything that small business owners need to understand about their customer's journey, because I think we can all agree it's pretty important when you're trying to figure out your marketing strategy that you understand how your customers are finding you and your business. So to start off, I think we just need to touch on the fact that the customer journey really isn't a straight line. As much as we want it to be, it certainly isn't that way. And I think there's a statistic that it's something like an average of 7 touch points it can take for a customer with a business before they actually come in and do business, make a purchase with them. So like when we say touch points, so I want to make sure we're all speaking the same language here. What is a touch point, Sarah?
Yeah, it's any way that a customer can interact with your business, right? So depending on the industry that you're in, you're going to have different touch points along the way. 7 is average. I've heard it goes all the way up to 11, 13, depending on the buying cycle. And it's really just, how often or how many times a customer is going to interact with your business or prospects or, in any industry. Before they actually decide to go with you as their option for whatever service that they're looking for.
Right. So that can be either through a website, through an ad, even looking at a review,
Hmm.
leaving a review as a touch point.
Yep.
So like, yeah, how does a business owner wrap their head around all of that? Because obviously 7 touch points, that's not what a business owner wants to hear. They want to
No.
hear they went to my website and made a purchase.
No, and I mean,
That's not how it
if
happens.
you're into this kind of thing as a business owner, you're probably asking people, "Oh, how'd you find me?" And they go, "Your website," and it sounds very, nice and like, "Oh, it's just 1-to-1 ratio."
Plain.
Right. The reality is they're probably seeing, ads for your business in their feed. They've probably searched for the services you provide and seen you in the search results. Maybe didn't even click you, but your name is there. Just that little kernel of like, oh, I saw them next to the person I did click on who, wasn't available. So now I'm going to go back into research mode. So it's a very, I don't want to say drawn out process because all of those touch points can happen pretty quickly, but it's not, oh yeah, I put an ad in the paper and you saw it and you came in that afternoon. It's a much longer, and to Sarah's point, depending on the type of business, Dan, you were just talking about having your kitchen, completely redone. That's not, you didn't hire the first person whose name you thought of or saw, that's, you've got to do
Right.
your research, you get your quotes, you probably do some comparison shopping. It can be a really, that's probably when you get into those 11 to 13 touch points where it's like, all right, now I'm ready to ask this person to take the job. And that may be very different if it's, there's a leak in your kitchen, right? Like you're going to call somebody pretty quickly. It's not going to take much for you to call someone. Just, oh, they're available 24 hours. Got it.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, and I think it's important. We're using the term customer journey. It can take other forms: buy cycle, customer life cycle, those types of things. One thing I definitely want to hit home is that no, you can't really skip parts of the journey. No one point is more important than another. It all works together, which just adds to the importance of that integrated marketing solution. That doesn't mean that you can't tailor your strategy to if you need more awareness because you're a newer business. So you just need to get your name out there. You can have strategies for that versus if you need more leads now, you can tailor a strategy for that as well. So when we're looking at the customer journey, how are we analyzing and thinking through that journey? Is there a method that we want to think through? Because I know a lot of times we think of it as a funnel. So, Sarah, can you walk us through that funnel and the different stages of the funnel and how they interact with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's really 5 stages, right? Your first one is awareness. The goal of this stage is to make people aware of your brand. Then you're going to trickle into consideration. That is somebody doing research on your business, potentially consider you as an option to do business with. From there, the customer decides they want to do business with you. They're going to enter the conversion stage, fill out a contact form, give you a phone call to get a quote. Then they're going to ultimately decide, hey, I want to work with you. They're going to move into that purchase phase. They're a customer. They are working with you moving forward. If they're happy with the service that you provided, they're going to then be a solid promoter for you into that final stage of, offering referral business. They're a loyal customer to you moving forward.
Yeah, and that helps fill that top part of the funnel again.
Absolutely.
And then I think a part of this, just to make sure we're all speaking the same language, your funnel, reverse triangle. So each stage, you're going to refine your audience a little bit more.
Light at the top.
To see, right? Yeah. So you're going to see those numbers get a little bit smaller as you go by.
Absolutely.
Now, Ian, how can somebody take a strategy? Because I mean, again, we just named 5 different stages of a funnel.
Right.
How are we building marketing strategies to account for all of those?
Well, it's interesting. I want to go back real quick to something you said earlier about, there isn't really a shortcut. You can't skip any of these steps, which is true. I think the other way to look at it is you cannot do some of these steps, but it's not a shortcut, So to go back to exactly what you just said, when you're in that consideration stage, if you as a business owner haven't done a good job of kind of, review hygiene, you either haven't generated reviews, recently. I mean, I'm not going to hire someone to remodel a kitchen who hasn't had a review in 2 years. Or, you don't bother with reviews, and maybe you've got even one negative review that you haven't responded to. That's the kind of thing that, you can't really, you have to anticipate this journey happening. You have to anticipate what can happen at each step of that journey and make sure that what you're doing to promote and market your business is there to meet people along each of those steps. So, going back to those 5 stages, right? Awareness, consideration, conversion, purchase, and referral or loyalty. It really matches up nicely with some of the marketing strategies that I think our typical small business owner would be familiar with. When you're talking about awareness, it's having a website that looks professional. It's making sure that, your Google listing exists, first of all, and has a current, phone number, address, etc. When you're moving into the consideration stage, it's what we've been talking about. It's reviews, it's your reputation. It's making sure that, people who are still not sure if they're going to fill out your form or fill out, that person's form. It's making sure that they have all the information they need about you to go, yeah, they're still in the running. I'm going to, they're on my short list. When you're talking about conversion, I mean, that's any number of things along that path. I mean, it's making sure that you have a website that has a form that someone can fill out. I'm sure, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I'm sure there's a generational plummet for folks who want to make a phone call these days,
Totally.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'd much rather, use a chat feature or fill out a form or send a text message or, you name it. I don't want to pick up the phone and feel like I'm, being pressured into something. Even though I'm the one initiating that conversation. And along the way too, as they're moving from awareness through consideration to eventually conversion, you're reinforcing what they've already learned, right? You've got ads running. You're retargeting them after they visited your website to say, hey, did you forget something? Or maybe you're saying, listen, if you come back now, it's 10% off. It's making sure that you are top of mind and that you're following them along that journey. Because whether it's a kitchen remodel or I'm trying to think of something that's more of an impulse purchase.
Even any need it now service,
Sure.
they're like,
Sure.
but
Totally.
right, a plumbing. But even then, even with those need it nows, if you haven't done the groundwork of awareness to get your brand out there, the first thought, if you can be ahead of the Google search, so to speak, and instead of waiting for someone to say, I need a tow truck, and there you go, oh, wait, I saw Tom's Towing for the last 3 years. I'm going to call Tom's Towing or look for them first. You've got the head start there. So you really, even for the need it nows, these other steps are very important.
Right. I mean, I think about like that example with the display advertising, right? It's an online billboard for your business. So, you're driving by on the interstate, you see a billboard. It's probably likely not something you need right away. I mean, think about the types of businesses you see on billboards, but it creates that brand awareness. The same thing you're going to do online, right? Is just kind of letting customers know and they feel comfortable with, like you said, Tom's Towing. So when they're on the side of the road, I'm searching tow truck, towing, anything near me in an emergency, Tom's pops up. That's going to be the choice you go with because subconsciously you've seen it. They're out
You're
there.
comfortable with it.
You're
Right.
comfortable with it, right? So you're not going to just choose somebody, honestly, if you're on the side of the road, you're probably not going to choose the first tow truck that pops up that has a 1-star rating where it says they never can.
I think about, the billboards I passed on my way to work this morning, right? And none of them are something that as I'm sitting in traffic, I'm going to really think about deeply, or certainly I'm not going to, get my phone out and look somebody up. But I can tell you, I can name 2 different marketing companies and a realtor because I saw them and I see them every day that I'm passing those billboards. And, I may not be looking for a realtor for another 3 or 5 years, but I can name 2, and that billboard is one of them. So that kind of awareness, that constant reinforcement, even if you're not right, a need it now service, that can really pay dividends in the long run as folks move through that funnel eventually.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting. You never think about what sticks in the back of your head. Because even if you're not even thinking like, oh, I need a realtor now. What was that billboard? You might just search for the realtor and you see that name, and then that triggers the, oh,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
moment. And then, it's also a little bit of like, hey, they put in the effort. So clearly they care about their presence as well. So I think there's a little bit to be said there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Small Business Small Talk powered by Haibu. Haibu is the leading provider of synchronized digital marketing for small businesses across America. With Haibu, you get all the digital marketing your business needs, all from one platform, one provider. Visit us today at haibu.com.
And something that we also need to think through, and I know that we pay attention to a lot in the services we provide, is that continual experience. So you want to make sure that someone clicks a website. They have a user experience on that website. Okay, great. Now, when they see a display ad, we have to make sure that that brand matches the display ad. The display ad matches the website branding. And then when they go to a landing page, that landing page matches the website. Then the social presence matches. All of these pieces, it needs to feel like it's one brand. It needs to feel like it's a continuous experience for the customer. And I think that's where having a single partner to work with can provide such big dividends.
Exactly. I mean, and all of those pieces are going to have the same call to action, right?
Mhm.
Like, call us today,
Yeah.
get in touch with us, visit us, things like that are so important that you don't necessarily think about, but you want to tell, we tell our clients, we want to tell your customers what you want them to do at every stage of the funnel, right? Check out our website, whatever the case may be. So I think that's really important. And you bring up a really great point of having one provider that can match all of that and make sure that you are hitting all pieces of the funnel and you're going to bring in those quality customers, those quality conversions or leads. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
And ultimately, hopefully turn them into repeat customers, right? I mean, that's the last step of the
exactly.
funnel is listen, you've
Right.
you've gotten the
Often forgotten
right.
last step.
Yeah.
You've gotten the absolutely often forgotten. You've gotten the lead, you've gotten the job, you've finished the job, they love the work. Remember to ask for that review. If you're uncomfortable asking for it, maybe or you forget. I mean, perfectly easy to do that. Make sure you have mechanisms in place where there's a follow-up email. There's, somebody calling out. There's something to make sure that you take that person who had a great experience, and they can now leverage that experience, in support of your business.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think feel like we've said it a million times at this point, but like reviews are the new word of mouth. No one's talking to their neighbors asking for advice. You may ask your family, but really they're looking at reviews probably before they even talk to anybody else. So if you're not taking that extra step to showcase the work that you've done through someone else's voice, you're really missing out on an opportunity to bring in more business.
Yeah. I mean, consider like people saying like, oh, well, word of mouth is how we get our customers. But that word of mouth is turning into, yeah, I trust my neighbor, but do I trust my neighbor? Like,
Right.
I'm going to still perform a search and I'm still going to, you know, do a check, right? I'm going to check what my neighbor is recommending me as the best possible option for me. So I think we have to consider that too. A lot of our business owners say, well, we get a lot of our business from word of mouth. We don't necessarily need a huge awareness piece, right? But I think that that's something to consider because, like, people are still going to look up your business, even if somebody is recommending you. I think that's really important call out too.
Sure. And that's just, the one-off review after someone's done a great job. I mean, the kitchen remodeling example doesn't work here, but imagine something where, you need frequent service. Maybe your HVAC system, right? You're supposed to get service twice a year. Maybe you had your hot water heater replaced And now, as the business owner, you're like, well, how do I get back into Dan's house? How do I say 6
Right.
months from now, like, hey, it's time for your, fall duct cleaning or whatever? That's part of it too, is you need to have these mechanisms in place, these systems and these marketing programs so that, even if you forget, there's something that's sending out that email blast. There's something that's, or even just reminding you, hey, open up your, whatever the current version of a Rolodex is, I guess the contact list on your phone, and make sure you call these folks, because even if, 1 out of 10 signs up for that seasonal repeat service, that's way easier than landing new business.
hmm
Right.
For sure. I think there's also a level of thinking through as you're going through the journey, thinking through the journey. There's a little bit of a cost of not doing business. Think about those business owners and those businesses where you aren't going to get a second chance to get them. I think instantly, like dentist. Like, how often are you changing your dentist? So, like, you need to really think through the cost of not getting that lead. And so you really need to focus through on, again, casting that wide net on the awareness stage, making sure you've got then a strategy to support that awareness, make sure that you can bring them down the funnel, ask for the conversion. I know it's always hard. And when I say that, that's where I mean those CTAs on the website. The form fills, make sure they're easy accessible, make sure the phone number is always accessible. All of those things. You really want to make it easy for someone to convert so you can keep moving them along their journey. So eventually they become a referral and a long lasting customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last thing I really want us to touch on here is thinking through that performance element, because I know we talk about that a lot. Having a dashboard, not just doing the marketing, but understanding its impacts and what it's doing for you. So having that dashboard where you can look through all the stages, what are some of the things that maybe a business owner should look at when they're reviewing their marketing strategies to look for areas of improvement?
Yeah, I mean, if you're having and you're bringing a ton of business to your website, right? You want to consider, is that business converting, right? And so, with our sites, we make it super easy to convert for a customer, right? Because you talked a little bit about the quickest path to purchase. So, when somebody is going to our website, they want to be able to contact us immediately. So things that you want to look at, right, is you're bringing a ton of traffic to your website. What is that, rate of conversion? How many of those people are actually filling out a contact form? If you have a custom built site and you're seeing a ton of traffic to your website, but no conversions, no contact forms, no phone calls, I think a simple thing to consider is how easy is it to get to that, right? Because I know if I'm doing even if I'm taking time to do research, I don't want to have to take time to figure out how I contact a company, right? Scrolling, finding different pages. So those are just some things to consider, right? And so that's really important when we are building out our sites for our customers is making sure that a customer can find you or make it easy for them to
Right.
get to you.
And it's not always it's also like it's not always on the site either, because sometimes you'll get the
Right.
conversions, but maybe those leads aren't turning into purchases.
Right.
So then you have to look even maybe a little offline and see what's happening in your nurturing process there, which is a little bit harder. But I think what's nice about like having a unified dashboard is the way we present data, at least, is it is in that funnel. So you can see where your awareness comes through. You can see your how that turns into consideration, into conversion, into referrals, all of that. Now, I want to make sure we're clear on this. You will have drop off.
Yeah,
There is going
exactly.
to be drop off. Not
Exactly.
everyone that sees your site will be a customer, and that's okay.
Yep.
You just want to make sure that you do have a simple path to create leads that can create purchase. But so you will have drop off. You just want to make sure that it's not crazy where you have like 10,000 like clicks to your site, but 3 people
Well,
convert.
and consider people like will go through the awareness phase to consideration. They might not even get to your website, right? Nowadays with Google, you have to make sure that your Google business listing, everything is set up because sometimes people aren't even going to go to your website to make a decision with the zero-click searches or whatever. They're going to search on Google, see you as an option, read your reviews without even checking out your website, and then they might actually click to call you. So considering some of that and seeing the awareness piece of your funnel and seeing that as still so important, even if it's not always trickling down to a, a direct lead from your website, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing that you mentioned there was that path again from awareness to consideration, but it's not always that simple as we talked at the top. It's not always linear. You could have someone that goes awareness, consideration. Maybe they convert for somebody, not you, but they didn't like it. So then they go back. They're back at the top of the funnel, going back and awareness. So that's where that 7 touch points comes through. You might be in your head, might be going, well, you only named 5 stages. How does that equal 7 touch points?
Exactly.
Sometimes they're going to be going back and forth between. They might not like what they see in a specific stage, so they go back to the step 1, especially for those longer buying cycles. I think this is a great topic. If people want to dive in further, they can always go to highbury.com and we have tons of resources, a lot of information about the funnel and just general marketing strategies over there. But thank you guys for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, you can always follow, like, comment, subscribe if you want more of our content. We'd love to hear from you guys as well. And we'll see you next time.